Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Anne Marie Fahey and Thomas Capano? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case. I'll move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Thomas Capano was born in Delaware on October 11, 1949. He went by the name Tom. He and his three brothers were considered part of a prominent family in the state of Delaware. The family was into real estate development. Tom became an attorney and had a good deal of success. He had a number of positions, like Deputy Attorney General, Public Defender, and legal counsel to Governor Mike Castle. Eventually, Tom became a partner at a law office in Wilmington. Tom was married and had 4 daughters. In the summer of 1993, Tom started spending time with a woman named Anne Marie Fahey. At first, the relationship was casual. Anne Marie Fahey was born on January 27, 1966. She was the youngest of 6 children. In March 1975, when Anne Marie was 9 years old, her 45-year-old mother died of lung cancer. Her father increased his consumption of alcohol and self-destructed emotionally. He stopped paying the bills. The utilities were shut off many times as Anne Marie was growing up. While Anne Marie was in college studying international relations in March of 1986, her father died from leukemia. He was 64 years old. A family friend helped Anne Marie secure a job working for Tom Carper, a Democrat congressman from Delaware. In 1992, Tom Carper was elected as the governor of the state of Delaware. He retained Anne Marie's services and made her his scheduling secretary. She apparently paid a lot of attention to detail and was very good at the job. Moving back to the relationship with Tom Capano, Anne Marie and Tom escalated their relationship from casual to romantic sometime around her 28th birthday, so around January 1994. It did not take long for Tom to become demanding and controlling after this. Anne Marie wasn't happy with his behavior. The stress aggravated her bulimia, and she lost a lot of weight. She struggled with symptoms like this for some time. Anne Marie started dating a 31-year-old man named Michael Scanlon in September 1995. Anne Marie was 29 years old at this time. Michael, being 2 years older, was a lot different than Tom, who was 17 years older. Anne Marie felt as though she had found a better match. At around this time, September 1995, Tom separated from his wife. He was very unhappy that Anne Marie was dating someone else. Tom threatened to take back the gifts that he gave her and called her on the phone repeatedly when she was getting ready for dates with her new boyfriend, Michael. Anne Marie informed Tom that she could offer him friendship, but nothing more. He told her that he loved her enough to accept her conditions. They agreed to be just friends. Tom had other love interests at this time. He dated a number of women. One of them, who later becomes important to the story, was named Debbie McIntyre. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On June 27, 1996, Tom and Anne Marie traveled to an upscale Italian restaurant in Philadelphia. Their waitress would later suggest the couple appeared to be miserable, uncomfortable, and unhappy. There was no laughing, no smiling, and not much talking. Just a few hours before the dinner, Anne Marie had told her mental health clinician that she was planning on telling Tom that he needed to stop contacting her all the time. In an email Tom sent to Anne Marie before the dinner, he promised to make her laugh and surprise her with something that would make her smile. It would appear as though Anne Marie and Tom had very different expectations for their dinner date. The couple left the restaurant just before 9 p.m. They traveled back to a house in Wilmington, which Tom had been renting since separating from his wife. It is believed that, at this time, Tom shot and killed Anne Marie in this house and dumped her body at sea the next day, June 28. Anne Marie's family reported her missing on June 30. Here's what the police found during their investigation. Tom was the last person to see Anne Marie alive. He said that he dropped her off at her home at around 10 p.m. and had no idea what happened to her after that. As part of Tom's story, he said that he purchased gas on the way back from the restaurant, but the gas station he specified was closed at that time, and there was nothing on his credit card matching a purchase like that. The police discovered that Tom went to a drugstore on June 30 and purchased blood and milk remover. This seems like an odd combination of capabilities for one product. I guess it was designed for cow serial killers. Like not serial killers who happen to be cows, but serial killers who commit cow homicide. Although, I guess the serial killer could be a cow. We do know that cow-on-cow violence is a major problem. The reality is, when a cowardly, bull-headed bovine becomes a killer, they are looking for a cash cow, and to them, there is no such thing as a sacred cow. Rather, they are utterly determined to take the bull by the horns. In addition to purchasing this bovine murder scene cleanup product, the police learned that Tom bought a rug just after Anne-Marie disappeared. They spoke to Tom's house cleaner, who told them that she was instructed not to work around the time of Anne-Marie's disappearance. When she returned to work, there was a new rug and sofa in one of the rooms in Tom's house. The police searched the house and found 3 drops of Anne-Marie's blood. Investigators realized that Tom must have had help in getting rid of the body. He didn't strike them as somebody capable of doing it by himself. They thought it was likely that one of his brothers was involved. The police discovered that Tom and his brother Jerry were in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, where Jerry had a boat. In addition, right after Anne-Marie disappeared, Jerry sold the boat. The new owner said that the anchors were missing. On August 8, 1997, the police raided Jerry's house. They found marijuana, cocaine, and 21 firearms. It was just the kind of leverage they needed to pressure Jerry to testify against his brother. Faced with potential prison time, Jerry agreed to tell them what happened. According to Jerry, Tom came to his house on the morning of June 28. He told Jerry that he needed help disposing of something. Jerry had a feeling that it was a body because Tom had this whole story about how a person was trying to blackmail him. So Tom had set this up in advance, letting Jerry know that there was this potential of having to get rid of a body. In this sense, Tom wasn't pursuing Jerry. It wasn't like Tom and Jerry were playing a game of cat and mouse. Tom and Jerry drove to Tom's house and loaded a 162-quart cooler into Tom's SUV. Anne-Marie's body was in the cooler. They drove to Stone Harbor, New Jersey, loaded the cooler onto the boat, and sailed about 60 miles into the ocean. The men threw the cooler into the water. When it didn't sink, Jerry used a shotgun to shoot the cooler. It continued to float. Tom retrieved the cooler and removed Anne-Marie's body from it. He wrapped anchors around her body before throwing her body back into the water. In addition to this body disposal, Tom asked Jerry to assist him with disposing of a sofa and carpet containing bloodstains. They dumped these items into a dumpster, which was owned by Tom's brother, Louis. Tom contacted Louis and instructed him to empty the dumpster. The authorities did not have a body or a murder weapon, but they were convinced that Tom was the killer. He was arrested on November 12, 1997, and charged with murder. It appears as though he was trying to flee Delaware. After seeing the news about Tom's arrest, a fisherman came forward and reported finding an empty cooler in the ocean on July 4, 1996, so not that long after Anne-Marie went missing. A barcode on the cooler matched the one that Tom Capano had purchased. The police spoke to Tom's other love interest, Debbie McIntyre. They discovered that she purchased a .22 caliber pistol about a month before Anne-Marie disappeared. Debbie told them that she purchased it for self-defense, but eventually decided to throw it away. It sounds like what she threw away was any chance at creating a believable story. Eventually, she admitted that she lied to the police. She was now saying that Tom asked her to buy a gun for him, she gave it to him, and she never saw it again. Debbie was offered immunity in exchange for her testimony. Tom Capano's trial started in October 1998 and lasted for 12 weeks. His defense attorneys were put in a bad position because Tom decided to testify against their advice. Here's the story that Tom told the jury when he testified on his own behalf. He and Anne-Marie were engaging in an intimate activity when Debbie McIntyre found them. She produced a pistol and threatened to harm herself. Tom wrestled with her, and the gun accidentally discharged. Amazingly, out of all the places the bullet could have traveled, it struck Anne-Marie and killed her. When Debbie McIntyre testified, she denied being at Tom's home that evening and denied shooting Anne-Marie. Thomas Capano was convicted of first-degree murder on January 17, 1999. He was sentenced to death, but later the state gave up trying to execute him, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On September 19, 2011, Thomas Capano was found dead in his prison cell. He was 61 years old. The cause of death was cardiac arrest. Obesity was a contributing factor. The judge who presided over Tom's trial suggested that Tom deliberately ate himself to death in prison. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Anne-Marie Fahey had early experiences like the loss of her mother and growing up extremely poor, which contributed to her being fearful and insecure. She was always worried about her needs being met. She was afraid of being abandoned. She even asked her siblings to take care of her, which they did. Anne-Marie was ashamed of her appearance, especially of her legs. She would write about how other women were more attractive than her, and she wanted to be like them. When she first came in contact with Tom, long before they were even friends, she initiated a higher level of contact. She asked him questions jokingly like, "When are you going to take me out to dinner?" Item number 2. It didn't take long into the dating relationship for Tom to become manipulative, domineering, and obsessive. He would have contact with Anne-Marie frequently, both by telephone and email. Tom would later tell her where she could go, what she could eat, and what she could wear. He controlled every aspect of her life. Anne-Marie was not happy about this, which is clear from her diary entries. At one point she wrote, quote, "I realized just how vulnerable I had become. I allowed someone to take control over every decision in my life," unquote. She then referred to Tom as a, quote, "controlling, manipulative, insecure, jealous maniac," unquote. Despite being harassed by Tom and recognizing that he was trouble, Anne-Marie did not want to completely terminate contact with him. She wanted them to be friends and for Tom to continue buying her gifts and expensive dinners. For example, on June 27, when they went to dinner for the last time, she didn't even bring her wallet or credit cards. She fully expected Tom to pay, which he did. By this point, Anne-Marie was very serious about Michael Scanlon. They had even talked about marriage. I think that Anne-Marie's insecurity would not permit her to dispose of a source of admiration, attention, and praise, even a source as destructive as Thomas Capano. Anne-Marie just could not let go of her relationship with Tom, and clearly he could not let go of her either. They had different levels of determination to maintain contact. Tom was willing to express a lethal commitment in this area. Which brings me to item number 3. Tom had murder on his mind prior to the night he killed Anne-Marie. For example, he had Debbie McIntyre buy him a pistol a month before the murder. Tom kept telling Debbie that he was going to marry her. It seemed as though he was planning a future with Debbie. Why was he so obsessed with Anne-Marie? Why didn't he just walk away from that relationship and move on with his life? I think Tom was highly narcissistic. He was grandiose, envious, had fantasies of the ideal love. He had a sense of entitlement and a lack of empathy. Tom thought of himself as a celebrity and a legend, but did not think too much of Anne-Marie. He believed that she should have felt honored to be with somebody as incredible, talented, and successful as him. He purchased Anne-Marie expensive clothing and accessories. They ate at the most expensive restaurants in Philadelphia. He wondered what more she could have wanted. Tom expressed his disbelief that Anne-Marie would choose another man over him. It just didn't make any sense to him. To Tom, money was the most important thing that a romantic partner could offer. On one occasion, when talking with a friend, Tom said, "I could buy her anything she wanted. I have more money than I can spend in a lifetime." For Tom, Anne-Marie's rejection was unacceptable because it violated his understanding of his own greatness. It ran counter to the way he elevated his standing in the world. One time when Tom was mad about Anne-Marie dating Michael, he broke into her apartment and started taking gifts, again reinforcing this idea about the importance of money. Money proved his value and should have kept Anne-Marie happy, at least in Tom's estimation. Item number 4. Thomas Capano's aggression was not restricted only to Anne-Marie. In prison, Tom asked a fellow inmate to arrange a burglary of Debbie McIntyre's house when she was away on vacation. He wanted her pieces of art destroyed. He specifically requested the eradication of a large mirror Debbie had next to her bed, in which Tom and Debbie would watch themselves. Presumably, he was referring to when they had sex. I don't know about the mirror, but I wish that image in my mind could be eradicated. Moving to the last item, number 5. It doesn't appear as though Tom's legal team liked him very much, despite the fact that his prestige was equal to theirs at one time. Tom tried to direct his defense from prison and was certain that he would be victorious. He thought a not guilty verdict was on the way. Sometimes he took advice from fellow inmates over his high-priced attorneys. One attorney said, quote, "I made a bad mistake in taking a lawyer for a client," unquote. Another attorney said that representing Tom was one of the most depressing and disappointing professional experiences of his life. I guess this is as opposed to the uplifting and encouraging professional experience he normally gets when representing a killer. Now moving to my final thoughts. The case of Thomas Capano offers yet another example of the dangers of allowing a narcissist to gain wealth, influence, or any type of power. This only makes a narcissist more dangerous and more capable of getting away with offenses. Fortunately, in this case, Tom was so narcissistic that no amount of prestige was going to spare him from justice. Those are my thoughts in the case of Anne-Marie Fahey and Thomas Capano. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be as intriguing as companies that offer cow murder scene cleanup products. Thanks for watching.